In 1960, a British explorer flew over the coast of what is now Dubai and described it as, quote, a modest fishing village with a few pearl boats and not much else. 60 years later, that same strip of coastline has the tallest building on Earth, the busiest international airport by passenger traffic, and a GDP per capita higher than Germany, Japan, and the United Kingdom. No farms, no factories to speak of, almost no oil anymore. So where did the money actually come from? Because here is the part that almost nobody explains correctly. Dubai is not rich because of oil. That is one of the most repeated half-truths in modern economic storytelling. Oil money built the runway. Something else entirely took off. And once you understand what that something else is, you start to see it everywhere. In Singapore, in Luxembourg, in Panama, in your own economy, quietly, in the background. This is the story of how you build a city that the entire world pays to use, even when they are not there. Let us start with the honest version of the oil story, because it matters. Dubai is part of the United Arab Emirates, a federation of 7 sheikdoms. Abu Dhabi, the capital, sits on roughly 90% of the UAE's oil reserves. Dubai's share was always modest. At its peak in the late 1990s, oil accounted for about 50% of Dubai's revenue. Today, that number is around 1%. So the rulers of Dubai faced a problem that most oil-rich governments never bothered to solve. They could see the end of the runway from where they were standing. And the man most responsible for what came next was Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who looked at that shrinking oil revenue and made a decision that sounds obvious in retrospect, but was genuinely radical at the time. He decided not to extract resources from the ground. He decided to extract value from the movement of other people's money, goods, and ambitions. That is a different business entirely, and it required building a different kind of city. The first move was geography, and it was almost too easy. Draw a line between Europe and Asia. Draw another between Africa and South Asia. Now draw a third between the growing economies of the former Soviet states and the ports of the Indian Ocean. Every single one of those lines passes over or extremely close to the same small patch of desert on the Persian Gulf coastline. Dubai did not invent this advantage, but it was the first city in the region to deliberately weaponize it. In 1979, the government opened Jebel Ali port. At the time, it was the largest man-made harbor in the world. Critics thought it was absurd. There was barely any local industry to move goods for. There was barely a local population to consume imports. That was precisely the point. Jebel Ali was not built for Dubai, it was built for everyone else. A transit hub, a place where a container ship from Shanghai could drop goods, split the cargo, and send smaller shipments to 20 different markets in the region without ever paying the full cost of a direct route. Dubai would take a small slice of every transaction, and when your harbor is handling millions of transactions a year, small slices become architectural. Today, Jebel Ali is the 9th busiest container port on Earth, in a country with a population smaller than New York City. But moving boxes is just the beginning. The second move was to make Dubai a place where money itself wanted to live. This is the part of the story that gets uncomfortable depending on your perspective. In the early 2000s, Dubai began constructing something that has no official name, but that economists sometimes call a regulatory arbitrage zone, a place where the rules are different, specifically more convenient. The Dubai International Financial Center, launched in 2004, operates under its own legal system, English common law, its own courts, its own financial regulator. It is essentially a piece of legal territory borrowed from a different era and dropped into the Middle East. For a multinational company trying to operate between London and Mumbai, this mattered enormously. You could structure contracts under familiar law. You could resolve disputes in a trusted system. You could move money in and out with minimal friction and, crucially, minimal tax. Corporate tax in the DIFC was 0 for 50 years, guaranteed by statute. When you offer that to international capital tends to show up. And it did, by the thousands. Banks, hedge funds, law firms, consultancies, holding companies. Many of them did not move their operations to Dubai. They moved their paperwork to Dubai. There is a difference, and it is an important one that we will come back to. The third move was the one that most people actually see, even if they cannot understand what they are looking at. Dubai became a luxury experience economy. And the mechanism here is slightly counterintuitive. Dubai did not build luxury hotels and palm-shaped islands because its government loved architecture. It built them as advertisements, as a signal to the world that this was a place where serious money was welcome, where ambition was rewarded, where the rules of the old world did not fully apply. The Burj Al Arab opened in 1999. At the time, it was widely mocked in serious financial circles as a vanity project, a 7-star hotel in a city of 500,000 people. But every photograph of that building, every magazine cover, every travel documentary, was effectively a free billboard reaching hundreds of millions of people saying, Dubai is real, Dubai is open, Dubai is where things are happening. Tourism went from generating almost nothing in the 1980s to contributing over $30 billion annually to the economy today. And tourism in Dubai is not the kind that comes on budget airlines looking for cheap beer. The average spend per tourist in Dubai is among the highest in the world. Visitors come, spend, and leave, and they tell other people.
The city is in a very literal sense a business model disguised as a skyline. Now here's the part where the math gets interesting and slightly uncomfortable. All of this required people, enormous numbers of people to build it, run it, staff it, clean it, drive it, and maintain it. Dubai's population in 1975 was roughly 180,000. Today it is approximately 3.5 million. That is a roughly 20-fold increase in 50 years. Here's the thing, about 90% of Dubai's residents are not Emirati citizens. They are migrant workers, expatriate professionals, and foreign investors on various visa arrangements. The city is staffed almost entirely by people who have no long-term political rights there, and who understand on some level that their welcome is conditional on their economic utility. The labor that built those towers, that runs those ports, that staff those hotels comes overwhelmingly from South Asia, workers from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, many of them operating under a system called kafala, a sponsorship arrangement that for decades tied a worker's legal status directly to their employer, limiting their ability to leave, bargain, or complain. Dubai's economic miracle has two faces. One appears in architectural photography. The other appears in construction camps on the outskirts of the city, where people work 12-hour shifts in 50-degree heat for wages they send home to families in places Dubai's tourism industry will never photograph. This is not a footnote. It is load-bearing infrastructure. So let us now zoom out to the bigger picture, because Dubai is not just a city, it is a proof of concept. What Dubai demonstrated is that in a globalized world, you do not need to make things to become wealthy. You need to position yourself at the intersection of flows. Flows of goods, flows of capital, flows of people, flows of information. You become the toll road, not the destination. And the model works right up until it faces certain stress tests. The 2008 financial crisis nearly ended it. Dubai World, the state conglomerate that had been financing much of the expansion, came within days of defaulting on $26 billion in debt. Abu Dhabi quietly stepped in with a bailout of $10 billion. The emirate that actually has the oil saved the emirate that had convinced everyone else it did not need oil. This was not reported as the crisis it actually was, partly because Dubai's government controls most of what gets reported from Dubai, and partly because the bailout worked. The towers did not stop rising, the tourists did not stop coming, the capital did not flee. But it revealed something important. The model requires confidence to function. The moment the world stops believing that Dubai is the smart, safe, well-run hub in a messy region, the capital flows reroute. The tourists find somewhere with better PR. The holding companies discover they can be incorporated in Luxembourg just as easily. The whole machine runs on perception as much as infrastructure. Which brings us to today and to the question nobody is quite willing to answer out loud. Dubai has spent the last decade making two big bets simultaneously, and they are not entirely compatible. The first bet is on becoming a global technology and innovation hub. It has launched free zones specifically for fintech, for artificial intelligence, for crypto. It attracted a wave of remote workers and tech entrepreneurs during and after the pandemic by offering golden visas, warm weather, and no income tax. The population of the marina and downtown areas shifted noticeably. The city got younger, more international in a new way, more startup flavored. The second bet is on remaining an indispensable partner to governments and capital that operate in gray zones. Dubai has become one of the primary destinations for Russian oligarch money after Western sanctions. It has attracted capital from Iran, from conflict economies, from places where money needs to be somewhere that will not ask too many questions. The gold trading sector alone is the subject of ongoing international scrutiny. Billions of dollars worth of gold from conflict zones in Africa has been refined, traded, and passed through Dubai in ways that technically comply with paperwork requirements, but strain any reasonable interpretation of ethical supply chain management. These two versions of Dubai, the gleaming innovation hub and the quiet haven for inconvenient money, coexist in the same square miles, sometimes in the same buildings. The question the city has not answered is whether it can keep both, as the world gets increasingly serious about financial transparency. The FATF, the global financial crime watchdog, placed the UAE on its gray list in 2022. It was removed in 2024 after the UAE passed a series of compliance reforms, but the gray listing was itself a signal, a warning that the model has friction points. Dubai worked. By almost any conventional economic measure, it worked spectacularly. A city that should not exist by the logic of traditional economic development. A city with no arable land, no rivers, no native industrial base, no democratic institutions, and historically no particular geopolitical significance, became one of the most strategically important nodes in the global economy. It did it by understanding something that most governments are too slow or too ideological to grasp. That in the modern world, the most valuable thing you can offer is a frictional surface. A place where things can happen that cannot happen as easily anywhere else. The price of that frictional surface is that you cannot always choose whose money slides across it. And this is the question that Dubai, and by extension every city and country quietly running a version of the same model, has not yet fully reckoned with. Not whether the model works, it clearly works, but whether a city built on the smooth movement of everything can afford to develop the kind of rough edges that real accountability requires. Because the thing about being the world's best toll road is that you cannot charge the toll and also inspect every car. Not indefinitely, not with the whole world watching.